Hola, molt bona tarda i benvinguts a la sessió informativa del Disruptor de Future of Manufacturing, que es durà a terme entre els propers 7 d'octubre i 17 de novembre. El meu nom és Marc Gràcia i soc consultor a l'equip de disrupció d'Acció. L'objectiu de la sessió d'avui és conèixer i veure què inclou el Disruptor de Future of Manufacturing i fer un tast de les tendències i disrupcions que hi ha en diferents països i oportunitats que es generen en aquest àmbit. A hores d'ara, tots som conscients que estem en uns moments de canvi accelerat, incert, no lineal i fins i tot a vegades incomprensible. Cal, doncs, preguntar-nos fins a quin punt la nostra organització és adaptable, resilient i està preparada per a aquesta disrupció. Tenim clar que cal configurar les empreses i les organitzacions en general per a respondre a temps de disrupció i ser capaços de convertir aquestes amenaces en oportunitats. Aquestes disrupcions, en molts casos, provenen de les tecnologies exponencials o avançades, de nous models de negoci, de noves tendències d'usuari o fins i tot de situacions externes inesperades com pandèmies, guerres, crisis, etc. D'altra banda, els mateixos aspectes del negoci de l'empresa ja establerta que l'han portat a l'èxit, alguns cops també poden dificultar la resposta a aquestes disrupcions i amenaces i tendeixen a actuar en alguns casos com a punts cecs, impedint reconèixer completament l'amenaça quan encara està a l'horitzó. Tenim exemples clars d'estudi com els casos de Kodak, Blockbuster o alguns altres. Part de la recepta per a saber veure-ho, reaccionar-hi i adaptar-se passa per incorporar noves metodologies que ens aportin adaptabilitat i també certa connexió amb l'usuari per anar generant aquestes respostes i anar disminuint el risc de la innovació més disruptiva que puguem generar. Un altre element és estar connectats, ser capaços de sortir del dia a dia i estar en connexió amb l'exterior, amb aquestes tendències que passen arreu del món. I a banda, una altra part important de la recepta és una cultura interna de l'empresa que fomenti el canvi, l'entreprenedoria i aquests tipus de projectes. El Disruptor s'encaixa en un punt concret d'aquesta recepta, que és la connexió amb l'exterior, allà on podem veure noves tendències o noves tecnologies i disrupcions. En aquest Disruptor en concret us acompanyarem a generar reptes per a la vostra empresa, reptes que poden ser individuals o conjunts i que podeu presentar després en algunes de les línies d'ajuts per a projectes de disrupció que tenim i obrim des d'Acció. També en aquest Disruptor podeu rebre feedback directe d'experts, podeu fer networking amb empreses tant catalanes participants com les internacionals que també estan reaccionant al futur de l'àmbit i, a més, també podreu conèixer algunes de les metodologies de transformació empresarial. Per això avui us hem preparat aquesta agenda. Donaré pas d'aquí uns minuts al nostre keynote speaker, el Wolfgang Merck, per parlar sobre els escenaris de futur en l'àmbit de la manufactura. Després connectarem amb dues oficines d'Acció, on ens presentaran breument l'ecosistema de la manufactura en els seus països o algunes de les disrupcions que tenen detectades. I per finalitzar, us explicaré el funcionament tant del Disruptor com del bootcamp que organitzem conjuntament dins del programa. Finalment, obrirem un torn de preguntes. Al torn de preguntes podeu deixar les preguntes, en el botó de Q&A que teniu a la plataforma. Les preguntes poden anar directament per mi, per temes d'organització o d'estructura o de format del Disruptor. Si teniu algun dubte en concret per algun dels speakers, us podeu adreçar en anglès en alguns d'ells. Si tenim temps, mirarem de resoldre també aquestes preguntes. Per acabar, Acció organitza aquesta jornada d'avui en el marc del programa Enterprise Europe Network, del qual formem part i que agrupa més de 600 organismes de suport a l'empresa a 60 països. I també aquesta proposta, aquest programa Disruptor i la sessió d'avui són actuacions del programa d'innovació oberta i disrupció d'Acció i del programa Catalonia Exponential. A partir d'ara ja dono pas, per tant, al nostre següent speaker, que ens presentarà diverses disrupcions i tecnologies que afectaran el futur de la manufactura. Com us comentava, és el doctor Wolfgang Merck i passaré a l'anglès a explicar la seva via i a passar-li el torn. Dr. Merck is a researcher at the Robotic Oxford Robotics Institute, focusing on optimal planning and control of high degree of freedom systems interacting with environments. He's also coach and consultant in digital transformation and disruption, where he's been working with Fortune 500 executive. He also has experience in consulting in projects focused in energy, mainly in energy, telecommunications, manufacturing, and automotive, among others. He got his certification as EXO Spring Coach in 2017. The EXO methodology is one of the methodologies that helps companies to be more flexible and to ideate new disruptive initiatives. And okay, so that's it. So welcome, Dr. Merck, and thanks for being here today. The floor is all yours.
Fantastic. Thank you so much for the kind introduction, Mark, and thank you all for having us here. So good afternoon and welcome on a very brief primer on what I consider to be some of the trends that may lead us in the future of manufacturing. And I think what we see here today is that mainly we're going to take a look at some of the trends and some of the exciting developments that we see in the convergence of different trends and underlying technologies that really made a variety of use cases possible that we've seen emerge in the past, say, 5 years, and that are enabling much more that are just at the verge of breaking out into our daily lives, and something that we may postulate today, what may come in the next few years, and how we might be able to use these technologies as they become ready to be used. I'm very happy to answer any questions at the end of the presentation, if there's space, of course. Otherwise, if anything is open, please do feel free to drop me an email and I can provide you with pointers or answers to your questions if they emerge. Briefly, to my background, extending a bit on what Mark said, is my technical background is robotics and machine learning. And I've spent about the past 12 years in areas ranging from service robotics, so there's things like developing robots for our homes, such as on the left-hand side here, building an automated kitchen with the world's largest industrial robot manufacturer, to working with NASA on humanoid robots for space exploration and Mars, to then building something such as high-performance mobile manipulation solutions with shared autonomy for things such as lights-out manufacturing and versatility in like, for instance, flexible automation. These days, I mostly work on the safe interaction of high-performance robots with people when they are deployed in very extreme environments. So we're thinking of things such as offshore facilities, large-scale infrastructure projects, disaster zones, but more and more also about flexible automation of factories and biotechnology laboratories, for instance, so process technology in general. I've also spent some time working on shared work cells for small and medium enterprises and how you can very quickly reconfigure them, or how your workers can reconfigure them for new batches, for new applications. As well as on shared autonomy. That's a concept I think that's interesting in the future as well, especially with these trends that we're going to talk about in a few moments, especially for areas that we cannot yet automate because there's too much unpredictability, or the long tail is too big. So here we will build on systems that allow us to operate autonomously for the majority of the task, including safe monitoring, so if things changes or if people are in the environment, and then they will only defer to the human operator with assisted tools so that it's easier for them to operate in those teleoperated settings when required, along with very clear instructions on how to unblock. Say there's these two constraints or these two goals and objectives that are entirely orthogonal to each other. You cannot, or the autonomous system cannot figure out a way how to reconcile these, and then the people have to come in and clearly like say, oh, these are the two conflicts. Please give me instructions on how to unblock this process. And this is something that's really interesting to get us further in automation. And then, as Mark said, over the past decade, I've also worked extensively with companies and ranging from startups to very large enterprises in areas of operations and innovation, looking at optimizing existing processes and, of course, architecting new product solutions with the very same methodology that Akio is also using in some of the applications and progress they're going to be running. All right, so let's get started. We have a lot of things to cover today, but before we get into any of these, I'd like to review of the reality of the challenges that we face today. And the reality is that the environments that we're operating in today pose significant challenges. And of course, and a recession notwithstanding, we've seen an extraordinarily tight skilled labor market for some time now, which has bounded scalability and bouncing back. And we've also seen that there's been a long period of reduced productivity gains where things become quite marginal, because most of the quick wins that we could achieve with automation and digitization have now been achieved. So these things that we now collectively refer to as the third industrial revolution. I'm sure you've all embraced that, and you've all been very advanced in these things, but now the incremental gain that we can get from automating is getting slimmer and slimmer by the day. And also, of course, we're seeing things like in the process of being automated, what people call or refer to under the banner of Industry 4.0, but these are not the step changes that we hope to get and to unlock the manufacturing sector. And especially this is true that now we're seeing a significantly changed customer demand pattern, right? So consumer demand is shifting faster than ever before. We see more customization required for products, and this is all happening while the product and process complexity that we're operating under is increasing. So this whole automation aspect with these constraints is quite difficult. And then, of course, finally, and we've recently seen enormous fragility of manufacturing processes due to this very tight coupling of the global supply chain. And any attempt to ensure business continuity, such as process changes or redesign or re-engineering to respond to that, has been really costly and has been an additional challenge and burden for businesses operating even at the forefront today. And the core concepts that have been proposed to help us address these challenges, of course, have been these challenges that we can now see in the next evolution of manufacturing are often referenced under this banner of Industry 4.0, or more broadly, the cyber-physical systems that people address in the fourth industrial revolution. And while this may allow us to enter this next stage, it is also quite different from previous industrial revolutions. If we think about the mechanization, the technology revolution, the electrification, and the digitization, what we're seeing now is when we want to adopt robotics in Industry 4.0, we no longer have to replace the entire process and requiring a tremendous capital expenditure, which in the past was something similar to you start fresh from a blank slate when these changes happen. And crucially for us, this also means that this is leveling the playing field for disruptors. Suddenly, these recent developments have so demonetized and democratized robotics that it's now available to existing companies as well as new entrants alike. And that is really changing the economies of how it can work when we try to deploy these technologies. With the fourth industrial revolution, you can also augment and optimize now brownfield sites rather than doing this. You have to start from scratch, huge CapEx expenditure approach with very selected projects to create more value in your existing sites. And you can also provide, of course, more agility and flexibility for both expansion as well as the resilience to respond to changes. With all of this backdrop in mind, let's now look at some of these technological developments underpinning Industry 4.0. And robotics is, of course, a very large part of that. And if we look at all these different keywords that people associate with Industry 4.0, we can broadly group them into 4 different features. The first feature is the one that is surrounding the areas of connectivity, data, and compute. And this encompasses anything about how we can instrument and connect systems to generate data and exchange information, as well as how we transmit, we store, and where we process this data, right? So you can either move it to the cloud or you can process it locally. You can have more sensors, you can do industrial IoT, you can process it in different ways and faster with less latency. And all of these things enable new features to come and to drive the ability of our system. So these are the machines, the sensors, and crucially also the people, right? And how we connect these and how they communicate with each other. And in an organizational context, if you want to look at these, they're underlying the basic infrastructure that enables us to build bridges with the outside world and to utilize new so-called social technology tools to interface people inside and how they communicate and how fast they can respond, as well as to bring in external resources such as staff on demand or utilize external assets that allow us to shift a lot of the previous CapEx expenditure that limited scalability at times to something that is now available as an OpEx expenditure. You can really leverage external investment to drive internal business adaptability. The second feature is more surrounding this area of human-machine interactions and information transparency. And this is where robotics mostly lives. The key here is that the interconnectivity that we've now enabled in this first part allows operators to collect this immense amount of data and information from all points of the organization an operation, and then subsequently make decisions based on this comprehensive optimization. And part of this process is also now allowing you to design systems that can either assist people in their decision-making and problem-solving, particularly when it is a dangerous or an unsafe task, but it is also allowing you to slowly move from human decision and very rigid organizations to be more decentralized in your decision-making and to place more autonomy in your systems, enabled by all this data, enabled by tools to drive these decisions. And from here, it is very clear to see how we arrive at the third feature, which is analytics and intelligence, which is where we're looking at how can we automatically process this data and either do make decisions or provide semantic, more higher level information, or how can we automatically move from assisted decision-making to automated decision-making to automate more aspects of the organization. And finally, the fourth feature is more around novel processes. And these can either be new technologies, additive manufacturing, bioprocesses that you can integrate, but also thinking about rethinking the concept of assembly lines and breaking up these processes, maybe moving to something such as a matrix production. And this is really where these four features come in line to really enable us to drive high-value activities carried out by people together, augmented with and combined together with all these advancements in technology that we see to build these cyber-physical systems. And what this is enabling us on the robotic side is much more of what I like to refer to as a Cambrian explosion, right? So we can see that we have these converging trends in data and compute and capability of sensing and actuation that allows us to deploy systems with much more versatile capabilities, because we're seeing an erosion in the price of components for the sensing and actuation and compute, which of course has in the past been largely driven by the consumer electronics supply chain. And while we can argue that there is a bottom floor, these things may not become free in essence, we can now see that there's a lot more variety and they fit better. So for instance, in the past, if a certain robot has had an almost constant price of say 30 or 50,000 euros, there's a lot more variety now at the bottom and at the mid segment that can fit your application range much better. And then, of course, because of all these tools of global collaboration, we can see much faster breakthroughs in the capability to process these applications now, giving us better perception. So now we can talk about high accuracy vision, really good touch for robots and for automation systems. We have better reasoning and better ways of training how to deal with all the sensing and then how to actuate and how to automate. And of course, we have better actuation, so including if you want to do fruit picking with soft actuation, or if you want to do dexterous manipulation, such as insertion of components that need certain dexterous skills in the fingers. And of course, all of this is then further accelerated and driven by a much lower barrier of entry. So you have lower training requirements, there's less complexity exposed to the user, and this really democratizes the ability of organizations to apply these technologies without having to rely on third parties or integrators. And what this has meant is that in the past few years, robots have truly become ubiquitous, right? So we are now seeing self-driving cars being driven without drivers in many cities around the world in trials and moving much closer to reality. We've seen delivery robots, including on sidewalks and with drones. We now have the ability to have high fidelity capture by anybody of an environment and then build digital twins and build augmented reality applications, say for training. And then, of course, we've also seen cobots everywhere. And the difference between the cobots from 10 years ago and the cobots from today is that we now have a lot more capability in how we can program them. They have a lot more sensing, so you can do tasks that you couldn't before. They're smarter, and it's not just about you set them up once they run. They can very flexibly make decisions on the fly and reconfigure. And there's also something similar to like apps. So you can get full solutions for bin picking, for force insertion of components, and that really reduce the complexity to set them up, and you can reconfigure them for smaller batch sizes very quickly. And then, of course, we've seen lots and lots of walking robots and leg robots in the public sphere, but they do have practical applications in inspection and as well as in entertainment. So they are entering our environment very, very quickly. But underlying that is the biggest change, and the biggest shift is really the tectonic shift that is beyond how we can automate, right? How does it affect manufacturing and value chains with this, what a lot of people refer to as the triple transformation of the business, the organization, and the product? And the first one is thinking about taking existing technology capabilities and moving them from products more to platforms and ecosystems. So third parties can drive additional value to the products and processes that you have, that you've mastered. And that can really allow you to build a larger ecosystem and generate more values and have a third party drive demand for your existing product. And that is a very, very powerful shift on one hand. The second one is that we're now seeing this shift also affecting, of course, the means of production, where we move from CapEx to OpEx. This has been common in some products for a long time, but we're now seeing this in a much more integrated fashion, right? So you now can, for instance, have applications where entire parts of the value delivery process is completely outsourced in your integrated facilities provided by a third party, paid for by you. So we're seeing this also with cobots and bin picking and automation solutions where you pay by the hour the same way you would pay for human labor, you pay for robotic labor. And that really reduces the cost of entry. And then, of course, it's a significant change in what the organization provides, moving from manufactured goods, for instance, to business models. And what this unlocks for us is that we can now move from having this challenge between price, quality, and personalization, often, of course, turnaround time, and start asking us, what if we can make this work? And what needs to change to really, really have it all? And frequently, the answer lies in flexible automation driven by certain building blocks. And these building blocks are that we can now get, as I mentioned, lots of sensors, and we get a lot more accurate three-dimensional imaging and force sensing. You can either get sensors that go 200 meters out at a 10 centimeter resolution or sub-millimeter in the close range. You can have force sensing. You have the density of vision that has increased while the cost has decreased. And of course, the impact here is in not just getting these sensors, but making sense of them. There's lots of products out there that give you and automatically extract you the semantic information that is pertinent to the business without having to deal with the technology or sensors inside. Algorithms have, of course, improved, especially with machine learning and AI-based methods. And initially, you can now get them in the cloud. And this means that a lot of the complexity of making sense of the raw data is now completely abstracted away and available either as open source or in the cloud, and you don't have to worry about building these capabilities in-house, but you can directly build on the information that they provide. And we now see companies that, for instance, combine these two aspects, sensors and algorithms, into solutions. For instance, turnkey localization solutions that you can then retrofit into your vehicles in the facility that then tell you exactly where you are. Then, of course, actuation. We've moved in the last 10 years from having about 2 manufacturers of cobots to hundreds of manufacturers with lots and lots of different products. So there's online tools that help you figure out what the right solution is and how to recombine. And of course, we've also seen standardization helping the recombination without much integration effort. That really is a game changer for businesses building a solution. So the key takeaway for us here is you have a great selection of components available from a multitude of vendors, preventing, of course, vendor lock-in, that you can combine to make a solution. And you don't need a specialist team to do so. A lot of the effort and development in recent years has been in standardizing these tools and making them easy to use to really reduce the barrier to entry and to democratize them. This means that we have low or no code that allow you to embody them and recombine them very quickly to derive the value that you want to see in the factory floor. And this, of course, means for instance, examples that you can pick right off the shelf that allow faster development deployment of custom solutions, and the world truly is your oyster here. And to give a few examples, some of this is driven by the fact that we now see middleware and open standards and open protocols allowing you to change which sensor you use, which hardware you use, which algorithm you use, without having to re-engineer the integration. That is really great because you don't get vendor lock-in. The second one is that we see improved no-code platforms. So if you want to build an MVP quickly, if you want to prototype quickly, you can do this very fast and figure out if it works. In the same way, we're now seeing ways where components can self-describe how the interactions are, and you can then recombine them in like a drag and drop click interface very quickly for simple integrations. And if you have systems that do not allow this flexibility, I'm sure you've seen the robotic process automation to automate what previously wasn't happening. And of course, the same technologies are also driving things such as predictive and preventive maintenance, continuous quality assurance, that really upends the game of what is possible because it is now so easy and ubiquitous to integrate them. And a good example is to look at this not just as what new technology you can bring into your supply chain today, but to think about how can you redesign the entire process and focus on the user. So if you think about this example here, so on the left, you see the space shuttle cockpit. On the right, you see the SpaceX capsule cockpit. This is not just about that this user interface is adapting to the stage that it needs to be, but the second one is that this is using very commonplace technology. This is like what's used in browsers, what is used in smartphones, which means the barrier to entry, the ability for you to have people to automate your systems is a lot easier because you have a wider talent pool to do. And in the same fashion, we can now see that we're driving towards high performance applications in your web browser. It's the same development. So of course, we've seen it from Microsoft Word moving to the cloud to Google Docs, where we have improved collaborations and higher performance, but they're starting to affect more and more areas such as photo editing, video editing. But more interestingly, for manufacturing, for instance, you can now have your complete CAD solution, your computer aided design in the cloud. And of course, that still means while it reduces the barrier of entry and the complexity of setting up new people or new environments, it still means that people need to have the same skill to use those tools. But that also means that we're now seeing changes in the process and in the thinking that, for instance, enable self-provisioned automation, where in your web browser, you can build your full solution, import your machinery, figure out what the right layout is, and in the end, get the whole kit shipped like an IKEA furniture to build your own automation solution and run your own factories. So from that perspective, I'd like to invite you to think about what does it mean with all these changes, with this capability of these systems to access more and more powerful hardware more directly? What does it mean for driving new solutions, self-provisioning? What might come in the future? Where might that take us if we have a broader talent pool to automate with much more flexible components? And of course, we've seen AGVs doing material handling. And I'm sure you've deployed these systems, but I think more recently, the point is we're seeing now advances in software to already very capable hardware that makes these things smarter and safer to move around people, and also more flexible when you have unpredictable schedule changes. And this is, for instance, highlighted in solutions here where you can have more optimized acceleration and deceleration profiles that improve your vehicle lifetime, or that reduce accidents or like damages to goods in transport. And these smarts is really what is now starting to drive much more innovation, because we now have hardware and systems that are capable and standardized to then be utilized on the factory floor, and then of course be deployed much more readily also with solutions that require more dexterity, more picking, more manipulation. More interestingly, though, is this means we can start to rethink our production processes. So what if we move away from an assembly line? What if we move to systems where you have work cells of certain capability that allow you to flexibly and automatically reroute batches and work pieces in progress with smaller batch sizes that allow you to have higher variability and better shop floor utilization. And similarly, as I mentioned, with cobots, we can easily redeploy these systems now, because a lot of the recent development really has been in the variability, the capabilities, so they essentially can get apps for certain segments, as well as the new business models, so they're much cheaper to get. And this means that you can have systems that either can be applied to existing sites and that retrofit in the site, or you can start rethinking the entire shop floor from ground up, optimized around robots rather than people, to really drive additional value and application. Similarly, we've seen this with things such as off-the-shelf bin picking or off-the-shelf automation of warehouses, and these have a tremendous impact when they are applied in selective parts and joint shared assembly lines in factories. And these are, for instance, two examples that are requiring more changes to the system. But we now also see applications that are much more versatile. They go much more beyond, that allow you to apply these logistics applications in your existing facilities. And there's literally dozens of vendors that allow you to do these things in one form or another. And this is an important leverage point, because a lot of the picking in plant can probably drive a lot of additional labor productivity improvement. Another aspect for labor productivity improvement is the concept of exoskeletons. And while these active things, that's what you see in that first video, allow us to lift really heavy loads, they're also really slow and really impractical beyond maybe a few niche applications. But you might start rethinking about different form factors of this concept, which may be passive, maybe active, that allow you to have reduced workplace incidents, reduced RSI, and improve labor productivity, and still use these new technologies that are now available to increase the marginal productivity you can get. In a similar fashion, we've now seen this confluence of better communication, better sensing, and better actuation to do things such as very low latency, very fast remote teleoperation of dexterous tasks. And while this first one, of course, is an ad spot that was live, that is not fake, that's, I think, important to mention, and seems rather impractical to do a haptic shaving application over long distance. This is actually something that is being widely deployed in facilities to improve labor productivity by remote teleoperation of fleets in complicated scenarios. So you have the autonomy, do the easy parts, and then you have people in these remote teleoperation settings do the very clear like dexterous part of manipulation. And then, of course, we've seen many systems that do facility inspection and monitoring, but I'm gonna skip over these now, because the key question that we'd like to ask in the next step is, okay, we've now seen lots of things that improve your existing facilities. What does it mean for us if we can add value and maybe push the boundaries enabled by these very same the most famous one was the improvement of the support structures in airplanes, where you need to have a certain rigidity, but you want to minimize your weight, and then the computer came up with solutions. The challenge is that these things can be really hard to manufacture, if they're manufacturable at all. But we now can see similar trends in the prefabrication space, where robotic systems can fully and autonomously assemble sub-assemblies that can then be constructed on site. So a clear enablement of a process change enabled by all these new algorithms, these new ways of building these flexible assembly chains that completely re-engineer how we deliver value across the supply chain. And while this may seem rather conceptual or academic at this stage, I'd like to close with this example of metal 3D printing. So what you see here is an industrial robot, and they've been around forever. And you see welding, and that has been around forever. But they're being recombined into a new solution, or in this case, they do metal 3D printing to build a bridge. And this is, of course, rather artistic, but this very same idea, this very same combination of concepts can, when applied to the right market, can unlock tremendous value. What I'm going to show you here on the right is a company that is doing 3D printing of rocket engines. That means you get free complexity with these same ideas, with these same concepts, just enabled by new software and by having the right idea. That is really powerful. Because now we have open software, and as I've shown you, we have off-the-shelf hardware, we have easy-to-use self-provision tools. And that means there's also lots of additional data, if you don't have it in-house, that can augment your internal data and processes. And there's algorithms and capability that you can pick off the shelf and reintegrate to unlock further value. And with that, it's important to remember that anything that becomes digitized enters the same exponential growth that we've seen in computing and many other sectors. And with the digital revolution and the lean revolution and the ERP revolution that you've all been through, we are there now. That also means that everything that is digitized initially is deceptive, and that growth appears to be slow. And that is what we've seen for the past 15 years. It has been very deceptive, the advancement. But now we're seeing this disruption to pop out everywhere. Suddenly, everywhere, things are shown to be disruptive. And I hope the examples I show today mirror that in some sense. And we've also looked at some of the different areas of how things become dematerialized and demonetized to lower barriers of entry. And I hope that you are as excited about the future that this Cambrian explosion in robotics is driving in manufacturing that I am. And I hope that there were some interesting insights for you in this overview, and that they may inspire you to revisit your current processes and think about opportunities to leverage these trends, especially if you may have tried them before in the past and they didn't quite work out the way they should have. Maybe now they might. Things have changed. Thank you very much. I'm very much looking forward to your questions, and particularly the discussion at the end. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Wolfgang. So you've been talking about many different technologies, robots and everything. And it's probably just a glimpse of all the different factors that will affect the future of manufacturing. So that's these topics that Wolfgang have been discussing and talking about. We'll be covering these technologies during the Disrupt Tour, together with the companies or startups or researchers that are developing these new technologies. And also we'll try to cover, let's say, the new business models that might appear in the future, the sustainability, how can we be more sustainable, materials. So there are some other topics that probably we will cover. So thank you so much, Wolfgang. I'm moving now to Catalan again. So Perfecte, doncs continuem amb la sessió tal com teníem programada. Ara donaré pas a les oficines d'acció a l'estranger perquè ens expliquin alguns dels exemples o alguns dels nombres i de les característiques de l'àmbit de la manufactura en els seus països. Començarem amb el Kenny Wong. Kenny és el consultor d'innovació a l'oficina d'acció a Hong Kong. Kenny, thanks for your participation. Your insights, although it's it's 10 p.m. in Hong Kong, so thank you so much for being here and sharing your knowledge together with us. The floor is all yours.
Thank you very much, Mark. First, I want to share my presentation. So you guys got it?
Yeah, not full screen yet.
Okay. How about this?
Excellent.
Okay. Once again, thank you, Mark. Good afternoon, everybody. I'm Kenny Wong. I'm the Innovation Technology Manager in the actual office in Hong Kong. In the office in Hong Kong, we take care of geographic locations, including Hong Kong, Taiwan, Macau, and also South China. In the next couple of minutes, I will briefly talk about the advanced manufacturing ecosystem in China, and I will also share with you 2 cases about the recent successful startup in the region. So as you know, China is the world's largest developing country with a population of 1.4 billion. And of course, for the past few decades, China has shown impressive economic growth. Nowadays, products that are made in China could be found easily in every corner of the world. A lot of this economic growth was driven by the rise of China as an innovation hub. And the rise has not just happened overnight. It is the result of a combination of policy to gather talent, capital, and government support towards the creation of a startup ecosystem. In particular, Shenzhen, a great example of the beneficiary of these policies, is home for the telecommunication equipment manufacturers, Huawei, the internet-based platform Tencent, and the place where a lot of the hardware and electronics devices in the world, including the Apple iPhones, are produced. You may see in the slides the numbers in terms of R&D investment per capita, not only in China, but more specifically in Shenzhen. Something more about Shenzhen. Shenzhen stands out for its incredible transformation from a fishing village with less than 30,000 residents 40 years ago to a city of 12 million in 2020. They have an economic scale larger than some of the developed countries. Shenzhen has been regarded as the role model for the country's development. According to the country's long-term strategies, by 2025, Shenzhen will turn into one of the world's most advanced cities and the top choice for innovation startups and investment. Next slide. Okay, yes. As you may know, advanced manufacturing is where factories integrate production machines, wireless connectivities, and sensors and links to the system platform able to oversee the whole production line and execute decisions autonomously. Following the pandemics, supply chain in China has experienced enormous stress. Production lines and goods distribution network have been severely interrupted. As a result, in the middle to long-term future, it is expected more and more manufacturers in China adopting to advanced manufacturing procedures to become more agile and mitigate production and distribution shortfall should an event like this happen again. So in terms of Industrial 4.0 and Industrial IoT, the transformation is taking place as we speak. But how and where? Well, some leading centers of smart manufacturing are already emerging in China. These include districts of Pudong in Shanghai, Wujiang in Suzhou, and Longgang in Shenzhen. And across the countries, more than 500 industrial parks specialized in smart manufacturing have been established. And Industrial IoT is among the new infrastructure agendas specifically mentioned as policy support priorities in China. Over the past year, China's industrial IoT market has seen a rapid growth, reaching nearly $1 billion last year. And according to GSMA, China will account for 1/3 of the global industrial IoT market by 2025. So China has said that it will build 30 brand new smart factories by 2023, all of them threatened with 5G. If ever there's an example of new industrial promised land, then this might be it. The biggest manufacturing nation in the world has said it will fast-track 5G for industries. The country's Ministry of Industrial and Information Technology revealed a new Industrial 4.0 action plan at the end of January 2021 for the 3 years to the end of 2023, including the construction of those 30 5G factories, plus a big data center for industrial internet, and 3 to 5 industrial platforms with international influence. China, traditionally seen as a world factories, has spent significant effort to transform from labor-intensive manufacturing to high-end manufacturing through the development of digitization, advanced manufacturing, and IoT. Okay, next we will going to look at a few startups. First, we have this startup called A Innovation. This company is founded in 2018, and A Innovation has already been valued over $1 billion after its Series C funding in 2020. Basically, it uses image classification algorithms and advanced detection and positioning technologies to provide sophisticated computer vision and pattern recognition solutions. Customers of A Innovations includes Foxconn, Nestle, Carlsberg, but we want to take a look at this particular case of Yidong Manufacturing Group. Yidong is a knitwear manufacturing helping clothing brands like A&F, Polo, Vans to manufacturing clothes. And quality control is one of the key processes for brands like that. And traditionally, it is a very tedious and time-consuming process done by human eyes. With the AI technologies from A Innovation, they will now take a picture of the end product, and the AI algorithm can check visually the quality of the products, including, for example, the sizing, the color deviation, and minor defects. It is said the efficiency of the process can be improved by 7 times. Next, we are going to take a look at this startup from Hong Kong called SmartMore. SmartMore started in 2019, and with less than 3 years, it's being valued over $1 billion already. SmartMore core advantage is in optical engineering, and the company is offering solutions around it, targeting the manufacturing sectors. Currently, its customers include some of the big names, such as Airbus, Canon, Bosch, P&G. And it can offer fault detections, classification, quality control, OCR in various industries like electronics, semiconductors, automotives, and optics, etc. For example, in semiconductor industries, the company claims to provide images as precise as 7 micrometers. The company has expanded rapidly, and it has already 3 overseas offices and 6 other offices within mainland China. So lastly, you'll find our office contact information here. So thank you very much, and I will pass the floor back to you, Mark.
Okay,
Yes.
Thanks, Kenny.
Thank you.
So it seems the camera's not working, but it's fine. Okay, start my video. Excellent. So yeah, thanks, Kenny. We'll be in touch, and we will see you again during the Disruptor. Molt bé, doncs ara passem viatgem i ens movem cap als Estats Units, on la Judit Cendra, la responsable d'innovació de la costa est. Des de l'oficina de Nova York ens explicarà l'ecosistema, els nombres, les estadístiques i hi ha alguns exemples que hagi pogut trobar en els Estats Units. Endavant, Judit. Merci.
Moltes gràcies, Marc, i bona tarda a Barcelona, bona nit al Kenny. Bon dia des de la costa est dels Estats Units. Com sempre, quan començo una presentació m'agafa aquesta fonia, no sé per què, el meu cos reacciona així, ja ho sento. Bé, anem endavant. Jo soc molt breu en cada una de les slides. Perdoneu, però teniu el meu contacte, així que qualsevol pregunta. No he compartit el so. Un moment, perdoneu. Compartit com sonera, molt bé. Bé, seré molt breu amb les slides perquè us vull ensenyar moltes cosetes, però qualsevol pregunta teniu el meu contacte. Com ha dit el Marc, jo estic de responsable d'innovació a la costa est dels Estats Units i és un plaer per mi estar aquí avui fent aquesta breu presentació. Molt breument, perquè tenim poc temps, només comentar que als Estats Units, a nivell de producció, de manufacturing, es troba en segona posició per darrere de Xina i que les principals empreses de manufactura que tenim aquí als Estats Units són Apple, General Motors, Ford i Cardinal Health. No vull entrar en elles, anem al gra, però sí comentar que a nivell d'inversió els Estats Units lidera el rànquing, està en primera posició, i no només a nivell d'inversió de venture capital, d'inversió privada, també d'inversió pública. I això per què és? Els números són molt clars. Per cada dòlar que s'inverteix als Estats Units, l'economia dels Estats Units ho recupera amb $2,68. O sigui, és molt productiu. A més, en dades del primer trimestre del 2022, la manufactura suposava un 11,4% del PIB, que són 2,77 trilions, i en quant a força de treball, al juliol del 2022, la fabricació donava treball a 12,83 milions de treball, que suposa un 8,5% de la força del número de treballadors, un 8,5%. A més, s'exporta un total de 1,2 trilions, això el 2020, i també el 2020, molt important, la inversió estrangera va ser en manufactura als Estats Units, va ser de 1,9 trilions, que suposa un 40,3% del total de la inversió que es va fer. I ara, això són les tendències en manufactura. El Wolfgang ens ho ha explicat molt bé, no entraré aquí, però de nou. Les tendències són comunicació amb el 5G, edge computing, la intel·ligència artificial, digital twins, el metavers, els robots i també sostenibilitat, molt important. No ens oblidem de la sostenibilitat, que també això marca qualsevol estratègia de les empreses. I això on ens porta? Això ens porta amb el que es coneix com les Smart Factories, les Dark Factories o les Automated Factories. I què és? On anem amb aquestes tecnologies és a augmentar la comunicació, augmentar la captació de totes les dades possibles. Hem de ser capaços d'analitzar-les, d'explotar aquestes dades que obtenim, per això hi ha tantes noves tecnologies per poder explotar aquestes dades, obtenir informació i amb això poder augmentar la intel·ligència humana, poder utilitzar la intel·ligència artificial per poder fer prediccions, per minimitzar els riscos i per augmentar la productivitat. Aquí tenim aquesta Smart Factory que ha fet la consultora Deloitte, que està a Wichita, Kansas, i el que fan és les proves pilot dels seus clients. Han fet una fàbrica que està al dia amb totes les tecnologies, últimes tecnologies que ja es poden aplicar a les fàbriques. I ells testen aquí nous projectes i fins ara, des que ho tenen fet, tenen aquestes dades. Utilitzant una Smart Factory amb les últimes tecnologies, han aconseguit una millora de l'eficiència del 20%, una millora de la qualitat dels productes del 30%, reduir els costos un 30% i millorar la seguretat i la sostenibilitat un 10%. Us posaré uns segons d'aquesta fàbrica perquè veieu com és.
We've shown you the renderings, and now we're backing up the hype. The Smart Factory is on. It's here, and we're ready to show you right now. 60,000 square feet of advanced manufacturing technology you can touch. Not a theoretical pie-in-the-sky idea, not some showcasey thing. Tech and capabilities to transform the way you do business today. Through custom simulations of smart factory applications, you can test, explore, and learn from the latest innovations in manufacturing. Factory and network optimization, quality sensing and detection, workforce and warehouse efficiency, energy management, and more is happening here. And you can watch it all play out through an end-to-end industrial scale production line, a fully connected, cyber-protected tech stack, and the factory's operations command center.
I ho deixo aquí amb aquest robot, que molts coneixereu, de fet ja ha parlat a Vaughan, d'això, que és el robot de Boston Dynamics, aquesta empresa de Massachusetts, que no només fa aquests robots estàtics, que tenen una funció específica en la cadena de producció, sinó que també té aquests robots mòbils, que a més tenen aquesta forma a vegades humanoide o gos, i que el que fan és moure's per les instal·lacions per captar informació. Està ple de sensors i van captant informació. I veiem, és com control de qualitat. Aquesta informació es recull i s'analitza en l'ordinador. Aleshores, aquí tenim una miqueta, també veurem uns segons. Dashboard es controla tot. Qualsevol ha arribat ara amb aquests sensors, ho controlen tot. I la idea és que cada empresa tindrà més d'un robot. De fet, hi haurà molts robots. I per això ara sorgeixen aquestes startups que, com InOrbit, que està a Califòrnia, i ara ha rebut un seed funding de 3 milions, i el que fa és ha creat una plataforma que controla tots els robots d'una empresa. Sigui el robot que sigui, recopila tota la informació i és capaç d'analitzar totes les dades per poder prendre decisions i reduir els riscos i augmentar la productivitat. També molt breu.
Every sector, addressing a growing need to automate repetitive processes across numerous industries. Winners and losers will be largely based on how well they minimize time lost due to robot failures. InOrbit offers the leading robot operations, or RobOps platform, to easily connect your robots to the cloud so they can be monitored, controlled, and optimized from anywhere. The platform was built with security from the ground up, including strong encryption at every level and role-based access control to limit visibility to only those who need it. InOrbit provides APIs and integrations to support your existing systems and tools.
I aquest és el dashboard des d'on controlaríem tots els robots i podríem fer tots els anàlisis. Ja deixem els robots. Ara us vull presentar aquesta empresa que el que fa són etiquetes intel·ligents. Aquestes etiquetes són micropartícules que estan fetes de sílica i que tenen una estructura específica que identifica cada un dels productes. Aquestes micropartícules es poden posar en qualsevol matriu, es pot posar fins i tot aliments o roba, sabatilles o un ordinador. Es pot posar des de les matèries primeres fins al producte acabat i aleshores aquesta estructura porosa genera una seqüència criptogràfica que es protegeix per blockchain, o sigui que assegura l'originalitat del producte des del principi i a més es pot llegir aquesta etiqueta amb un escàner específic o també fins i tot amb una aplicació mòbil. O sigui, és una etiqueta que està revolucionant, que ja està al mercat, que ja es pot obtenir i que és molt senzill després de llegir per part dels usuaris. I d'aquí passem a aquesta empresa, per cert, TrueTech Technologies, és de Califòrnia i ha rebut un total de finançament de Venture Capital de 86 milions. I passem a aquesta de sostenibilitat, que també és de Califòrnia i que ara al juny ha rebut 36 milions de Venture Capital. I el que fan és decarbonitzar el gas natural, perquè és una font d'energia que és econòmica, que és abundant, però el problema és que contamina l'atmosfera. Aleshores, ells el que fan és agafar el gas natural, treure-li carbó, que l'extreuen de manera sòlida, i aleshores queda l'hidrogen, el qual pot ser utilitzat i genera només aigua per l'atmosfera, per tant, redueix la contaminació de les fàbriques. I amb això he anat molt ràpid per ensenyar-vos diferents coses, però de nou teniu el meu contacte, el del Marc, el de tots nosaltres. Qualsevol pregunta serà un plaer contestar-la. Marc, moltes gràcies.
Moltíssimes gràcies, Judit. Doncs bé, per no endarrerir-nos més, jo passo ara a dedicar els darrers 5 minuts a presentar i explicar el que és el Disruptur, el que és el programa, el que és l'ampliació d'aquest tast, d'aquesta sessió que hem fet avui. Doncs comparteixo pantalla i so. Ups, start my video, ok. Perfecte. Doncs vaig a presentar llavors el Disruptur de Future of Manufacturing, que durem a terme del 7 d'octubre al 17 de novembre. Com us comentava al principi, quan parlava de disrupcions i de que hem de ser flexibles i avançar-nos, etc., tots els principis de la unitat d'Open Innovation, Disrupció, Catalunya Exponencial d'Acció, generem aquest programa, per una banda, perquè tingueu un espai per pensar i sortir del dia a dia i mirar més enllà. Aquest Disruptur serà com una mena de missió virtual. Fer connexió i networking, no només amb els participants catalans, sinó també amb les oficines exteriors d'acció i amb tots els ponents internacionals que assistiran a les sessions, que seran ponents com alguns dels exemples que han explicat el Wolfgang, el Kenny i la Judit. Hi ha una part d'aprenentatge i validació de les idees de negoci futur, tant a través d'un bootcamp formatiu com també de les mateixes sessions on podrem interactuar amb els ponents, de tal manera que podem aprendre i validar algunes idees que tinguem, que tingueu vosaltres, més concretament, les empreses, i una banda d'un punt d'inspiració també, d'impacte positiu a la realitat de l'empresa. Els continguts que donem, sobretot en les sessions del Disruptur, són, seguint amb la línia del que hem fet avui, tendències, com les noves tecnologies avançades o exponencials estan afectant en aquest àmbit, no només les tecnologies per se, sinó també combinacions o noves aplicacions de tecnologies i també nous models de negoci. I això ho farem escoltant i debatint amb pimes, startups, corporacions o agents de recerca d'arreu del món que ja estiguin desenvolupant idees disruptives o noves tecnologies en aquest àmbit, o també d'alguns experts que ens puguin il·luminar sobre les noves tendències. Per tant, no serà un exercici unidireccional, sinó que hi haurà espai de debat en totes aquestes sessions on podrem parlar de diversos dels tòpics i dels temes i tecnologies que hem anat comentant durant el dia d'avui. L'estructura, diguéssim, d'aquest Disruptur és la sessió informativa que hem fet avui. Després, amb places limitades, el 7 d'octubre, un bootcamp presencial, on treballarem la definició i ideació de nous reptes per a vosaltres, per a les empreses. Després, la resta de l'octubre i principis de novembre, farem 6 o 7 sessions online internacionals, amb ponents, amb aquests exemples que ens han mostrat avui i d'altres, de diversos països participants en el Disruptur. No només tenim Estats Units i Hong Kong, sinó que tenim altra part de la Xina, tenim Israel, tenim Alemanya i algun altre país. Per tant, parlarem amb speakers d'arreu del món i una sessió presencial a poder ser de tancament amb tots els participants catalans, per tant, d'intercanviar idees i conclusions, etc. Passo directament aquí, en format, diguéssim, bonic, com us deia, el 7 d'octubre, bootcamp presencial a l'edifici del Pier 1 a la Barceloneta, per temes logístics i per temes també operatius. Sí que és veritat que aquest bootcamp està limitat a la participació de 18 empreses, de manera que sigui òptim i puguem treballar també de manera en petits grups o fins i tot individual. La setmana del 17 al 21 d'octubre Farem sessions individuals amb cada una de les empreses participants. Aquestes sessions les farem amb el conductor, el consultor, l'expert que ha dut a terme el bootcamp. Al bootcamp ara mateix us passaré un breu vídeo que explica quines seran les parts d'aquest bootcamp. I a partir d'aquí, i sempre amb un petit espai de temps al mig per pair els reptes, el material i totes les conclusions que anem traient, passem a fer diverses sessions on volem abordar diferents tòpics d'aquestos que hem anat comentant avui, que han enumerat la Judit, he enumerat també el Wolfgang, de connectivitat, de robots, de sostenibilitat, etc. Seran 6 o 7 sessions. La idea és, per facilitar també les agendes, bloquejar-nos durant aquesta franja de temps, una hora segurament els dimecres al matí i una hora els dijous a la tarda, sempre a la mateixa hora, de tal manera que puguem entrar tots i ens connectem i puguem interactuar. I llavors la idea és el 17 de novembre fer com un tancament. Pensem en això com també, com si fos una missió virtual, comencem, ens veiem en persona, treballem els objectius, els reptes, fem diverses sessions i visites virtuals internacionals i després fem un tancament conjunt. El format de les sessions internacionals és similar a aquest que veieu en pantalla. Normalment tenim un moderador i un parell de speakers o 3, triem un tòpic, evidentment deixem un breu temps als ponents perquè ens expliquin la seva disrupció, la seva tecnologia, els seus projectes i després deixem, depenent de la sessió, uns 20-25 minuts per poder debatre, els participants catalans pugueu fer preguntes i debatre amb aquests ponents internacionals. Els que estigueu interessats en participar en el Disruptur, hi ha una part, diguéssim, de compromís típica pel fet de participar en un programa com és aquest, que és una mica el compromís amb el programa i les activitats, predisposició, poder-hi dedicar el temps, si més no, el temps assignat a les sessions i al bootcamp. Algunes d'elles s'haurà de preparar algun tipus de material o informació, sobretot en el bootcamp. És interessant també en les sessions amb speakers internacionals intervenir amb càmera i veu i fer preguntes, com si fos una missió presencial i féssim una visita amb una acceleradora o amb una startup o una corporació. És interessant també interactuar amb aquests speakers, evidentment, puntualitat i les més filosòfiques, de tenir bé la ment oberta a aquestes noves idees i estar preparats per la disrupció. Com a programa que està definit el Disruptur dins Acció, aquest és un programa que té un cost de 200 euros per empresa. Com us comentava, principalment serà en format virtual, utilitzant el Teams. En el cas que hi hagi més de 25 empreses interessades, el que farem és un procés de selecció dels participants per assegurar l'encaix en el programa. El procés de selecció és bàsicament prioritzar sobretot aquelles empreses catalanes, potser més industrials, que estiguin més enfocades al futur de la manufactura i que són aquell target principal al que volem ajudar. Això no vol dir que puguin participar, evidentment, si hi ha places, entitats, consultors o agents de recerca sense cap tipus de problema. Sí que es prioritza potser més l'empresa industrial que necessita aquesta empenta per desenvolupar els seus reptes. Com us comentava, la part virtual, la limitació no és tan gran. Per la part de bootcamp, per tal que sigui òptim, sigui una limitació a 18 empreses. Aquest bootcamp presencial sí que us demanarem que vinguin un parell de persones per cada empresa perquè sigui perquè impacti, diguéssim, més. En la resta de sessions, en les virtuals, sí que poden participar diversos membres de la mateixa empresa. Hi haurà un link per la sessió. És interessant que sempre hi hagi algú de l'empresa participant en totes les sessions perquè pugui veure d'una manera global tot el que volem mostrar, però en qualsevol cas aquest link el pot compartir internament i poden assistir diverses persones de l'empresa a totes les sessions. Aquí teniu el link, us l'he deixat, si no m'equivoco, també en el xat. Les inscripcions pel Disruptur seran fins al 23 de setembre i, insisteixo, en el cas del bootcamp limitat a 18 empreses, s'assignaran per ordre d'inscripció i sempre i quan, en el cas que diguéssim hi hagi algun dubte o algun empat, sí que es pot prioritzar l'empresa més industrial, però en qualsevol cas us animo a tots a apuntar-vos i a pensar en això, que les assignarem per ordre d'arribada segons inscripció, les places del bootcamp. presencial. La resta de sessions estan obertes fins a un nombre aproximat d'unes 25 empreses. I ara us deixo un breu vídeo de lo que serà el bootcamp del dia 7 d'octubre, tot el dia presencial, de mà del consultor, de l'expert que durà a terme aquest bootcamp, explicant el que farem.
Hola, muy buenas tardes. Soy Matías, soy el Managing Director de Nouvel, que es una consultora en innovación y tendencias. También soy coach en IESE y socio de un Corporate Venture Builder basado en Múnich, en Alemania. Me es un gran placer poder presentaros el bootcamp, aunque me entristece no poder estar ahí con ustedes hoy. ¿Por qué el bootcamp? El bootcamp es realmente una oportunidad de aprender, sobre todo aprender juntos sobre frameworks, sobre metodologías y aprovechar la dinámica que esto desata en términos de aprendizaje, de todas las perspectivas que podéis aportar a retos comunes y hacerlo pues como cluster, como indie pools y posiblemente más allá. Os voy a presentar en pocas palabras lo que es la agenda de la jornada. Para que os hagáis una idea, vamos a empezar lo que es una puesta en contexto de este mundo bastante loco en el que vivimos y que no va a hacerse más fácil, digamos, y lo que nos permitirá, digamos, de tener un poco una comprensión común de lo que es este futuro exponencial que nos espera. Después veremos el EXO Framework, que es una metodología y una serie de herramientas muy poderosa que están usando muchas empresas de alto crecimiento por el mundo. Y luego entraremos en lo que es una visión quizá un poco más de liderazgo, en profundidad de liderazgo sobre lo que es el future back versus present forward, esta lente que nos permite realmente crear, articular una estrategia y construir una narrativa que motiva, entusiasma a todos los stakeholders en la empresa. Va muy ligado al propósito que veremos a continuación y por la tarde ya entraremos en herramientas y métodos más concretos que nos permitan construir este futuro que deseamos. Unos son los moonshots, ¿no? Estas ideas, estos proyectos de potencial 10X para la organización. Hablaremos también y utilizaremos solos y en equipos lo que es el EXO Canvas. Es un canvas que complementa el Business Model Canvas. Como sabéis, el Business Model Canvas nos permite visualizar lo que es nuestro modelo de negocio, normalmente sostenible, y hacerlo escalable, ¿no? El EXO Canvas nos permite ver cómo se puede hacer más escalable nuestro modelo de negocio actual. Y terminaremos pues hacia las 6:30 de la tarde con las conclusiones, una cierta dinámica creo que va a ser muy enriquecedora para todos, pero no es el final del bootcamp. Os invito una semana después a una sesión de 45 minutos juntos online, de forma individual online, en la que revisamos algunos conceptos, algunas nociones que vimos en el bootcamp y cómo las podéis aplicar en vuestra organización, quizá los desafíos o problemas con los que os habéis enfrentado a la hora de tratar de implementarlos y ver cómo se puede, encarar esto de la forma más eficaz y eficiente. Pues nada más, me alegro mucho de ojalá veros todos el día 7, será en el Pier 01 en el puerto de Barcelona. Creo que es un edificio fantástico, muy representativo para esta era y sin más me despido y os deseo una muy buena tarde. Adiós.
Perfecte. Aquí teniu el meu email. Tot i que crec que en el link us he passat per les inscripcions, hi ha també el meu contacte. En qualsevol cas, és marc.gracia@catalonia.com per qualsevol dubte que no puguem resoldre ara o no tingueu ara mateix durant les Q&A. Perfecte. Doncs moltes gràcies. Deixem aquests últims minuts per si teniu algun dubte i voleu posar-lo pel xat. Durant la presentació del Wolfgang sí que hi ha hagut una pregunta prou llarga, que em sembla que tots teniu accés i la podeu llegir, i m'agradaria si pot ser donar accés perfecte. Aquí està el Wolfgang. Hi, Wolfgang. So I forward you the question that you had on the chat, and I'm not going to read it again. And actually, I think you're going to split, you're going to break this question in some different parts. So feel free to answer the question.
Fantastic, thank you. Yeah, thank you so much for the question. It's a very insightful, very long one. I'll split it into 4 parts. The first one was a question about delocalizing and what we should do about the fact that we have geopolitics and geoeconomics that are changing, and we need to have having very high costs of delocalizing productions. And the challenge here really is how can you think about maybe the capability that you provide and turn it into a platform, and maybe how you can build an ecosystem to leverage different capabilities. And this sounds very abstract, but there's a very concrete example that you can look at. And there's a Harvard Business Review case study about Haier, the Chinese white goods appliance maker, that have turned their operations and the entire company to these micro teams that then operate on a platform. And people can either internally, like teams internally in the company, can bid on certain very clear projects and provide solutions, as well as companies outside. And you can think of the same idea for an ecosystem where you not think about we manufacture X, but our capability to produce and manufacture X is actually these many steps in between. And we can now package these as solutions to an ecosystem. And if you do that, and if other organizations in the environment do that, it's much easier to, instead of think about company X produces Y and you buy Y, and yet now you want to have it local rather than global. You can start about thinking about the processes that go in and that you can leverage. And we see that some of these things have been done in the fashion industry and in fast fashion. If you think about how Zara operates versus how H&M operates, but now you can think about the same thing applied to any context of manufacturing. And so Haier is a very good case study to look at. The second question was around data strategy and how nation states can think about that. This is really, really complicated. I think the key things is about how do we standardize exchange of information and exchange of data store. And these are very complex contexts. And that means I think you really need to look at things like organizations that look at standardization. And there's a huge push also in the EU to start standardizing some of these processes. And there's a lot of lobbying organizations as well, and consortia, some industries, some top-down, some bottom-up, that look at standardizing these things. And I think this is a good place to think about. But it's a super important topic, and there's no easy answer to data strategy. The third subsegment of the question was about how do we deal with the state of energy supply and the challenges around that. And I think this is actually super interesting, because we can start thinking about algorithms that look into scheduling, and not just scheduling of step A has to be before step B, before step C, before step D, but now you can start about thinking you have a certain cost of energy at a certain time in the day. Can you start automatically schedule which step of your production take place at what time to optimize for cost of energy? And this is something I haven't seen people do yet, but it would be something very interesting to do. The second one is a lot of these algorithms that I only mentioned in passing now allow you to optimize for energy efficiency. So you can have, for instance, a robot do exactly the same path or the same motion in a process. But by optimizing this energy, by optimizing the motion that it actually takes and the control of how the system executes that very same motion, you can save 20 to 30% of electricity requirement. And there's companies that specialize in doing just that. And for instance, a good case study was Volkswagen. They re-optimized how their robots did the car manufacturing, and it saved, I think, 20% or something along that in electricity for the very same thing to be done. And then, of course, you can start thinking about advanced concepts such as grid and load balancing, or algorithms that run, for instance, your plant as a virtual power plant, or as a way to equalize load in the grid and get incentive payments for that, or you get payments to shift your energy consumption to different times of the day. So that's something to think about. So I don't think this is a huge problem right now, but there's a huge opportunity to become a lot more competitive if you embrace these new technologies. And then the final part of the question was about how do we deal with minerals and rare earth materials. And I think that's super hard to deal with, because that, of course, is geopolitically very clear. But I think the answer here can be think about what are new processes and technologies that do the same thing as the thing that takes the rare earth minerals. And the good thing is, if you think about we need rare earth minerals for motors because of the magnets in there. So the question to ask is, why do we need rare earth minerals? Well, because they're very strong magnets. Then you can start thinking, well, why do we need strong magnets? Well, because we want to have this high efficiency motor. And if you can keep asking yourself why, at some point you end up by figuring out that you can break an assumption down. And for instance, there's new types of electric motors that still have high power density, high efficiency and low torque ranges, for instance, axial motors, that do not need those same rare earth minerals. These are sometimes ways to think about new processes, new technologies. The second one is, if you ask these whys, you can think about, for instance, energy storage. We all think about batteries, lithium ion, lithium ferrite, phosphate, whatever the technology is that you think of. But for instance, for grid storage, there's a company that stacks concrete blocks. That doesn't require much rare earth minerals, but it has a huge capacity to store. So sometimes by thinking outside the box, we can find solutions that get around using these minerals. And finally, maybe recycling or waste mining. Considering waste streams as resources might become more lucrative and more economically feasible when we have these constraints of access. So these are ways of how to think about and how to reframe a problem into maybe an opportunity to make the organization more resilient in the face of these adversities. So thank you so much for this very insightful and really deep question.
Okay, thank you, Wolfgang, for the answers. Yeah, and actually, this is the kind of questions that most the participants could make to the speakers that we'll have during the Disrupt tour. So this is the way we work normally, using the cameras and the mics and everything. This is what we are offering you during the Disrupt tour. So ja, fins aquí hem arribat, no hi ha cap altra pregunta de darrera hora en el xat. En qualsevol cas, insisteixo, teniu el meu contacte. Doncs fins aquí, moltíssimes gràcies per assistir a la sessió d'avui i animar-vos a participar en el Disrupt Tour que començarem d'aquí unes setmanes. Que tingueu molt bona tarda.